Hey guys, Mike here with EBR, and this is the Ride1Up Limited version 2 or V2, and it comes in at $13.95. Now, normally at $13.95 in the e-bike market, it's kind of a mixed bag on what you can expect to get. But this has quite a few surprises up its sleeve, some really nice performance, and just an all-around good lineup of components. So let's take a deep dive on the Ride1Up Limited V2, and we'll see just how well this performs. All right, friends, so the Ride1Up Limited V2 ships as a Class 2 e-bike, but it's certainly Class 3 capable. You can go into the advanced settings and just increase that max speed. So you do get pedal assist and throttle up to 20 miles an hour, and then pedal assist will then take you beyond up to 28 miles an hour. Now, like I said in the intro, this is priced at just $13.95, which in today's e-bike market seems to be, like I said, kind of a mixed bag of what you can expect to get, but this one seems to be a really solid just balance of value, safety certified, and just performance. And we'll kind of get into what makes me think that, but just know heading into it, at $13.95, I feel like this one is a very solid bang for your buck. Now, this is UL 2849 certified, and the battery's 2271 certified, and they say this bike weighs about 55 pounds on the website. Now, usually when I get those, I just kind of test it real world, throw it up on a scale. And this one came in right on the money at 55 pounds with the battery in it. So that was nice seeing that it actually met up to what the advertised weight is. A lot of times brands will put a lower weight or maybe the weight without a battery. Anyway, just nice to see this came in at 55 pounds fully dressed. Now, if you take the battery out, it goes down to about 47 pounds, and that battery itself is about 8 pounds. Now, it comes in two frame configurations. This one is called their XR frame, which has the higher standover height. And if you do the ST frame, that stands for step through, and that will have a much lower swept frame that you have easier access to step through on. Now, the step-through version is going to be for the shorter riders or people who just want that easy access, and that one fits riders from 5'1" up to 6'2". Now, this one being the XR with a higher 30-inch standover height, this one fits riders from 5'6" up to 6'4". Now, personally, I fall in right in the middle there, around 5'11", and I found the bike fit me really well. It felt comfortable. I felt good riding the bike, but I will say, if you're north of 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" even, I would think the bike would start to feel a little small for you at that place, but at least know they do say is sized for folks that big. Now, when it comes to colors, we do have 3 color options. This one is the charcoal satin, which is a nice matte dark gray. But if you don't like that, they have what they call snowstorm, which is a matte white, or brushed copper, which is kind of a matte colored orangish copper hue to it. It looks really nice as well. I think that's a new color for Ride1Up. I haven't seen it on other bikes, but those are your 3 color options. Now, some geo numbers for this specific bike here. This XR frame has a 30-inch standover height, a 43-inch wheelbase from rear hub to front hub. The reach up top is about 14 inches, so kind of a short reach, which kind of lends to my theory that if you are 6'3", 6'4", the bike will feel kind of small. And then in the seat post, you have about 11 inches of adjustability from around 32 inches here all the way up to 43. Now, when it comes to wheels, they went with a 27.5-inch alloy wheel, and they wrapped it in a 27.5 by 2.4-inch WTB Groove E tire. Now, this tire, 2.4 inches thick, plus this commuter slick tread pattern it has, the bike rides very smoothly, very little rolling resistance, if any. And when you have that much volume at 2.4 inches wide, it just gives you a little more leeway with how much air pressure you run. And I found the low 30s on this, coupled with this seat and that front suspension fork, it's just a really, really smooth, comfortable ride. Now, in terms of accessories and things like that, this will ship with front to back lighting. So up front, you're gonna have a 60 lux headlight that's activated through the display controls up top. And you have a wired in rear tail light here in the rear fender. Now, speaking of fenders, these fenders are alloy, and you do hear us say we'd like to see PVC or composite or plastic fenders because they tend to just take a little bit more abuse and be a little quieter. But I will say on this bike, these fenders were very well mounted. They have several mounting points and areas where they kind of are retention bolts and screws that hold them. So you have one down here, one here, and then you have these supports on the back. They just don't really move much, and for me, PVC or alloy, as long as they're quiet, don't rattle, and work, then I'm happy, and these kind of all fall into that category. Now, there's one other additional mounting point. You can add a water bottle cage here on the seat tube, but there's no other, so there's no front rack mounting area. You do have the ability to run a rear rack. Now, it's not included as a free accessory, but they do have it as an optional accessory should you want to buy one. And there's mounting points for the rear rack as well. So really, it's very commuter street, like city rider friendly. You've got your fenders, your capability to carry racks, and your front to back lighting. All right, so when we talk about things like the powertrain on this, we're gonna have a rear hub motor. Now, this motor is rated at 750 watts nominally, and the motor is made by AKM. And this 750 watts, they don't list the peaking wattage, but I have some clues onto how high it goes because the display up top, which we'll get into here in a little bit, it will show you real time your power wattage output of the motor. And I noticed when I went full bore or started from a stop in PAS level 5, that wattage meter would go up to about 999 and then just kind of, it would be pinned there. And so I think, or I suspect that it does go over 1,000 watts peaking. I just can't confirm that because they don't list it, and that tops out at 999. But based on how it performs, which we'll kind of talk about as well, I definitely think it peaks over 1,000 watts. Now, it's also got 90 Newton meters of torque, which is a really solid amount of torque for a commuter bike like this. Just makes hill climbs, getting over things, speeding up, passing people, whatever you're doing, getting up to speed with traffic, whatever you need to do speed-wise or power-wise, this 750 watt motor with 90 Newton meters of torque is spot on and does a really good job. Now, the motor's activated through a torque sensor, and I get to test all sorts of torque sensors from all sorts of brands and styles, and I can tell you not all torque sensors are created equal. This torque sensor, I'm happy to tell you guys, is phenomenal. It's very good, it's very natural feeling, and the motor and torque sensor together when you're riding this bike, it's very little noise, almost none, and it's super smooth. It's never jolting. It's just really refined and smooth. Again, at the $1,395 price point, just feels like a lot of premium bike for not a premium price. Now, when it comes to the battery, we do have a fully integrated 48 volt battery here that's got 14 amp hours, giving us a total of 672 watt hours. Now, this battery is also UL 2271 certified, and it does come with a set of keys to lock and secure it for off-the-bike charging. I'll show you how that works now. So every bike will come with a set of keys. This has the key slot on the left side. Simply turn the key 180 degrees, and it drops the battery, but you'll see there's still a retention latch, so you'll just push that with your hand, and then that will release the battery from the bike. Now again, UL 2271 safety certified, 672 watt hours, and this, along with the entire bike, has a 1-year warranty. Now to put it back, you're simply going to put this bottom section in first. That way the pins kind of go into the right spots, and then you simply click it back into place and it's locked, ready to go. No need to adjust the key at that point. Now, when it comes to range, they say this battery motor setup will give you 30 to 50 miles, which is a pretty modest estimation. When I took this out on 2 runs, so the first run I ran on max pedal assist, so level 5, kind of going full bore, and I was able to get right at 30 miles. So that all seemed fine and kind of within the estimation. But when I went down to PAS level 1, just for more of like a 10, 12 mile an hour ride, I was able to cover 65 miles, vastly surpassing their 50-mile estimate. I'm 5'11", 180 pounds, very little elevation changes. That was a relatively flat ride. But either way, even with ideal conditions, 65 miles in this setup was just really, really good numbers that I was ultimately very happy with. All right, so in terms of components and what kind of gear you have to work with, we've got an 8-speed drivetrain that's ran on a Shimano Altus 8-speed rear derailleur. The cassette is a Shimano cassette that's a 12 to 32, along with a 48 tooth chain ring up front with a chain guard mounted on it. Now, the cranks are going to be 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and you have pedals that are alloy pedals, which is always nice to get those out of the box. And they also have some traction studs and reflectors for visibility. Now, in terms of braking, this bike has 2 piston caliper hydraulic disc brakes, and they're made by Tektro. It's a really established brand with a good reputation, and the brakes perform very well on here. You've got 180 millimeter rotors, both front and rear, and all in all, I thought the stopping was really good on this bike, no complaints there. Now, in terms of the saddle, this is the Ride1Up Velo Comfort Gel saddle, and while that's kind of a long name, all in all, it was a really comfortable saddle. I had no issues with it. It's a little wide back here, which just ultimately more comfortable for your sit bones. And all in all, no complaints on the saddle. Now, moving up, we do have a Suntour XCM front suspension fork with about 100 millimeters of travel. Now, this is a coil spring, so it's got a lockout adjustment on the right side, and then you can do a preload adjustment on the left side of the stanchions. And speaking of stanchions, these are 32 millimeters thick. Now in the cockpit, we have an alloy bar here with a slight 50 millimeter rise. That just makes that reach a little more accessible, a little more comfortable and upright. And on both ends, we have lock-on ergonomic rubber grips. On both ends, we also have our Tektro brake levers. And on this right side, we have our Shimano index shifter, 8-speed shifter with a little window to let you know what gear you're in. And on the left side, we have a push throttle along with the display. Now, in terms of cable management, these are pretty well kept up with these like cable wraps that they have, and then everything mounts right into the frame right here behind the head tube. So really, these are the only cables you see on this, and other than that, it's pretty streamlined the rest of the way back. Now over here is the display, and let's take a closer look and just show you how the display works and some of its features. All right guys, so this is the home screen on the Limited V2. Now there's no app connectivity on any of Ride1Up's bikes, at least as far as I know at this point, so no need to worry about an app. This is going to be the brains behind everything you do. So just the layout is set up. We have up in the top right, the voltage, a battery bar that's kind of indicated. It will go down real time. That green will go down as you ride the bike. The center is our miles per hour, current speed. The left has that real-time power wattage output that as you accelerate, you will see that number kind of fluctuate based on how you're driving or riding the bike, but it does tap out at 999 watts. Over on the right, you've got your trip meter, and on the left, your odometer. Now, if you want to cycle through some other screens on here, you just tap the power button. If you long press it, it'll turn the bike off or on, but if you just tap it, you'll cycle through some of these. So the max speed on this so far has been 37 miles an hour. Average speed is around 16.2, 273 minutes on the bike, and 226 miles overall. Now, if you want to adjust some more advanced settings, you're going to hold the plus and minus buttons together, and that will take you to the settings menu. Now here you have your display settings. You can go in and adjust the trip reset, toggle your units between imperial or metric or miles an hour and kilometers per hour, change wheel size if you changed your wheels, change the speed limit. That's where it will ship as a class 2, but you can simply change it to class 3 right here. Here you can set voltage, state of charge view, and sensitivity for the motor, but I don't generally recommend messing with those unless you're having some sort of problem or working with support. Now, there's some other things to note. If you go into your advanced settings, there's some more things that I caution you to not mess with unless you really know what you're doing or you're working with support, but you've got things like setting the power. So currently it's on levels 1 to 5 to use pedal assist, with 0 being no pedal assist. But you can do as low as 3 levels, you can have the 5 levels like we have here, or you can even go as high as 7 or 9. You'll simply press this button and then you'll just toggle through. So you can do 0 to 7, 1 to 7, 0 to 9, 1 to 9, and the same with 3 or 5. I'm gonna leave it on 5 because that's just what I had on the bike. There we go. And you'll see when I first confirm it, you can then go and adjust the power of the motor within each level of pedal assist. So you can really fine tune how the bike rides. Again, not needing an app to do all this, you can control it right here in the display. So I'm just going to cycle through that, and that will take us back. So you can also set a limit to the current. So 13 amps is where it's at, and I don't adjust those things. I'm not sure what assistant number is. Speed sensor. Again, I wouldn't mess with that unless you're having trouble with your speed. Your slow start, your LCD luminance, or how bright this display is, and then you can set a password for the bike. Now you can go back and take yourself back to the settings screen, and then if you go down to the information screen, you'll get things like the software version for the bike you're riding, which support may need if you're ever working with them. So let's go back here, and then simply go to exit, and you're back into your home screen. So that wraps up the whole display. As you can see, it's kind of small and out of the way, which I personally like. I don't like big screens on bikes, but it's still got tons of data for you to go through, and even some really cool customization settings you can mess with. So yeah, that wraps up the display on the Limited V2. All right, we're out here on the Ride1Up Limited V2. So when you ride this, the riding position is kind of a hybrid upright. You got your hands leaning forward into these ergonomic grips, which are kind of nice platforms for your palms. But then you're also a little bit upright. You still see the path around you. It's not super forward and aggressive, and it's also not perfectly upright. Kind of just that in-between hybrid position that we've come to see on these commuter bikes and kind of expect at this point. So they say it fits from 5'6" to 6'4", this XR frame, which is the higher top tube. And I'm 5'11", so kind of right in the middle of that range. And it feels just fine to me, although I'd say at 6'4", it might feel a little small, but that's just me guessing because I can't pretend I'm 6'4" and tell you what it feels like. But I feel like it's fit well for me at 5'11". So if I was 6'3", 6'4", I just suspect it might feel a little small. One thing that is really nice about this bike, and you guys have heard me say it a few times on other bikes, it's just very, very quiet. So you can hear the hub pals engaging in the rear wheel, which is normal. But other than that, you have these WTB Groove E tires. They're nice, fat, 2.4 inches wide, but they're a slick commuter tread, so they don't really make any road noise. And then there's no rattles, mystery sounds coming from the bike. And then the motor makes almost no noise. I don't hear it at all. My own voice and the wind is kind of louder than the motor, which is great. So let's do a little throttle test, because this bike is punchy. Surprisingly punchy. It's the 750 watt rear hub motor that has 90 Newton meters of torque. It's made by AKM, I believe. And this limited version has a torque sensor, and it's extremely well done. It feels very, very nice. I'd say it competes with big box, not big box, but legacy big brands of bikes. But let's do a throttle test to 20. See how long it takes to get to 20 miles an hour. PA is 5. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're at 10, 15, and 20. Now, one thing you'll notice on this bike, you might have saw it on my little speedometer here, is I've noticed when I throttle up to the maximum of 20 miles an hour, which is where it should be for a throttle, it does kind of over jump that to about 21, almost 22, and then it dials itself back, and it just kind of subtly backs off and brings you back down to 20 miles an hour. So you will creep over 21, at least this model that I have does, but it does comply with the 20 mile an hour limit. The cool thing is though, this bike will get up to 28 really quickly. Okay. All right, so let's do that now. Let me get to a better gear. We're going about 15, and we'll see how long it takes to get up to 28. All right, go. And so there you go. We got almost 30 miles an hour, just a couple pedal strokes in the 8th gear. I mean, the bike's torque is just really, really good. I have to kind of dial it back on these paths because our limits here are 20 miles an hour, and this thing easily wants to go more than that. As far as comfort goes, I'd say the bike is really comfortable. You've got ergonomic platform grips, you've got a wide cushion saddle, smooth rolling, kind of fat tires, and then a front suspension fork. So, I mean, between all of that, it's just a really comfortable ride. Hi. The brakes on it are Tektro 2-piston caliper hydraulic disc brakes, which Tektro just consistently makes good bang for buck hydraulic disc brakes that can be serviced anywhere, have good longevity, and good brand reputation. Kind of give them a little feel right here from 20 miles an hour. So I'll stop in 3, 2, 1. A little bit of a lockup at the end, but that was me trying to aggressively stop. These brakes just consistently perform well. I'm always pretty pleased with them. This would be a very solid commuter. It's not expensive, relative to e-bikes. $13.95, front headlight, rear tail light, fenders that are not making any noise, and they're alloy fenders, so that's really awesome. And just a nice, comfortable ride. It's a really good, just kind of zip around town. It's got the look of a bike that can kind of do a little bit of anything. It's just been very solid. And this torque sensor is so, they throw around the word refined a lot in e-bikes, talking about sensors. And I don't know if that's the best word to describe it, but it's definitely really natural and smooth feeling. And I think Ride1Up does a really good job with their motors. I mean, you guys probably can tell by now, but I'm kind of a fan of Ride1Up. Their motors are quiet and smooth. Even their cadence sensor with programming of the R1 CBC system is really good. Ride1Up just seems to consistently put out some good stuff. So let's throttle up this little neighborhood hill and see how the motor does. See if it kind of slows down at all. So I'm hitting the motor now, throttle only, no pedaling. And we're sitting about 18 and a half, 19. So we're accelerating uphill, which is really cool. If you saw that, it got to 23 on throttle, but then it caught itself and it backed down to 20 miles an hour. This bike just wants to go fast. But I'm riding uphill with the throttle pegged, and I'm not coming down off of that 20 miles an hour. I'm in a pretty steep section right here. I saw a couple half a points of speed drop down, but not even a full mile an hour down. The 90 Newton meters of torque on this bike is a really solid pairing. We're still going uphill and it's just holding that speed the whole time. That's really cool. I don't think all the e-bikes we test could definitely pull that off. Maybe I'll start adding this little loop on all of them. But yeah, commuter, get around campus, weekend fun bike. I mean, this bike can fit a lot of needs for a great price, and it's a rear rack compatible, so you can throw your gear on. A pretty minimalist display that I personally like. And there's no app for these bikes, but I don't think bikes always need an app. Kind of one of those things that I think people like seeing that there's an app, but doesn't really add a lot to the bike. All in all, it's been really smooth, quiet, and fun bike to ride around. I even commuted for a couple days to the office on this bike, took it home on the weekends. Just kind of got to know it, and it's one of those bikes that if you didn't know what you wanted, but you wanted something that kind of felt premium but didn't have a premium price, it could do a little bit of whatever you needed within reason, obviously. The limited V2 here is a really solid option. All right, guys, so let's go over from a kind of a build perspective and a mechanics perspective, the things that stood out to me when I was assembling this bike and as I was reviewing it. There's some things that either stand out in a really good way for a build quality or maintenance perspective, and then some things that could be improved in future releases of these bikes. So we'll kind of hit on both sides of the coin here and talk about things we liked and things that we'd like to see improved next go round. Now, before I start, I want to say thank you to Feedback Sports. They have a line of really nice bike stands and toolkits. They've sent us a few of each. We've really enjoyed using them. They're lightweight. The bike rack is awesome. It's super stable, easy to transport and fold up small, but also can hold bikes really up to 100 pounds without any issue and let you work on them. They're just really good, stable racks. If you guys want to check those out, or you need some extra tools and you like tweaking on your bike, just check out the link down in the description and you can check out Feedback stuff. So I'm going to kick it off with things that just stood out as good from a build or mechanics perspective. So the first thing on here, I had to use some notes because I can never remember them when I'm putting the bike together. Oh, the tapered head tube. So tapered head tube is essentially going to be wider at the base and it's going to get narrower at the top. And ultimately what that means for you is you're going to have a more responsive ride, you're going to have a stiffer front end, a more secure connection, and when you're leaning into corners, putting down power and moving, that's when you want that front end to be really solid, and a tapered head tube is a really strong way to get there quick. So kudos on the tapered head tube. The next one is going to be the standard stem. So sometimes we see bikes come with adjustable stems, which some people really like and others don't. Sometimes we see sort of proprietary stems. This is a standard mountain bike stem. You can pick up a replacement at any bike shop, Amazon, anywhere you go. And because it's on this tapered head tube with an 1.1 inch steer tube, you can easily swap this out for whatever kind of stem you like, whether that be adjustable, longer, shorter, whatever. This is just a nice universal setup that's going to be easy to use and easy to work with, whether you need to upgrade, repair, or replace. Oh, the drivetrain. So 8-speed drivetrain, Shimano setup. It's not a super high-end drivetrain, but it's got something unique. And when you get into these lower gears, so this is a 8-speed drivetrain. Now, on a performance bike, you might have 24 speeds, you might have 12 speeds. When you have more gears in the same amount of area, the way they compensate for that is they use a narrower and thinner material chain, as well as the cassette sprockets are also narrow. I don't think I can say that word today, but you get my point. They're less space, there's less material, and it allows them to cram in more gears. Well, when you have less, they can thicken those up, they can have a thicker diameter, and ultimately what that means for you, the rider and the owner, is that you're going to be able to cover more miles, shift more gears over time, and this drivetrain in theory should be able to last much longer than more of a high performance that may look cooler and be lighter and have a lot more gears, but it's also going to wear a lot quicker. This is a workhorse. It's going to be able to stand the test of time, so kudos on that as well. All right, so some things that I would change about this, or maybe recommend for improvements over the next go round, is going to be, one is, you guys know by now, metal fenders are not my favorite. You can already hear them rattling when you hit them. I'd rather see plastic. Plastic's going to be lighter, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to take more abuse without bending, rusting, things like that, rattling. Metal fenders may look cool at first when you buy them, but over time, in my opinion, they're just kind of a headache to deal with. Rust, bending, rattles, all those things. Plastic is the way to go for fenders. Up front, we have a quick release. So a quick release, the reason why they call it a quick release is back in the day, you used to have a bolt. You'd have to get out a tool, take the bolt off to get the wheel off. With a quick release, you can quickly remove it by just flipping that lever and unscrewing it, tire pops off. Now that's great on the side of the road when you got to change a flat tire, but a bike that's got a suspension fork and is kind of able to cover a lot of ground, curbs, potholes, things like that, I'd just rather see a more secure connection. A through axle would be ideal, maybe even a bolt axle up front. Quick release will do the job, and there's inherently nothing wrong with it, but it's not going to be the best connection for a bike you plan on putting a whole lot of miles on over time. And then finally, this was actually a pro, so we're going to go back to pros, but this was the headlight mounting position. So I originally said it was a con because it had this single wire that would easily get snagged. And while that's still relatively true, the overarching thing about this headlight is, and it's ultimately the better thing, it's got a very simple mounting mechanism on the top of the fork here, and it allows the headlight to turn with you as you're riding. A lot of times we've been seeing either proprietary head tubes that have like the light built into it, or they have a kind of a special stem that has a light mount kind of engineered into it, and ultimately if you end up breaking that, you're going to have to find a whole new stem assembly, or if you have a head tube light, that's a whole other beast if you need to repair that because it's a proprietary system. This is going to turn with you. It's going to be easy to replace and repair should you have to. It just makes life that much easier. So I kind of like the placement of this headlight and the way it's set up. It seems to be a better choice than what we've seen lately, which is more of the proprietary systems, which may look cooler in the short term. They're a headache in the long term. So that kind of wraps up the things that stood out as the pros and cons from a build and mechanics perspective. And all in all, it's a well-built bike and it's fun to ride around. All right, friends, so there you have it. That is the Ride1Up Limited V2. Again, priced at $13.95. Hopefully you guys agree. Let me know down in the comments, but it feels like a lot of good value or bang for your buck in today's e-bike market, especially 2025. We've got price increases and tariffs and things going on. This just seems like kind of a breath of fresh air, something accessible price point wise, but still really practical, fun, and most importantly, it rides really quietly and smooth and has a lot of power on tap should you need it. It's going to be great for anybody who needs just kind of a do-it-all bike. I mean, it's not going to be an off-road bike. You've got these slick tires on it, but really commuting around town, college campuses, going to work, things like that, your weekend recreational rides on your trails in your city. It's just a really fun, smooth bike that I think a lot of people will enjoy riding. Now, if I missed anything that you want to know, drop a comment down below. And until I do another review, I will see you guys out on the trail.